At 11:42 p.m. local time on December 28, 2025, the whole world was shocked to learn that 91 Ukrainian drones had just crashed into the presidential residence, causing direct panic for Putin. CNN and a host of other media outlets immediately reported the news, highlighting Russia's humiliation in the face of this preemptive strike before the new year. Leading the charge are 70 Beaver attack drones. These are long-range loitering munitions, each carrying a 44-pound shaped charge warhead capable of punching through reinforced concrete or vaporizing a luxury armored limousine. Flanking them are 21 Luti drones. These big boys are the quarterbacks of this operation, acting as decoys to light up Russian radar and relay targeting data back to Kyiv. Just 48 hours ago, after the Trump-Zelensky peace talks hit a wall due to Moscow's stubbornness, Russia launched a massive grid strike, plunging half of Ukraine into freezing darkness. This swarm is the receipt. But here's the scary part for the Russians. This mission didn't start tonight. For the better part of a year, Ukrainian intelligence, likely fed by high-resolution optical feeds from Allied commercial satellites, has been obsessively mapping the Valdai estate. They know that at 11:15 p.m., the radar operators on the southern perimeter get tired and sloppy during the shift change. Think of it like a corporate takeover, but with high explosives. Ukraine has spent months doing market research on Putin's security, and they found a gap in the market. The Russians built a fortress designed to stop nuclear missiles and NATO fighter jets, but they forgot to waterproof the windows against a flood of cheap, smart, and angry plastic robots. At 10 p.m., the infiltration doesn't kick off with an explosion. It begins with a high-stakes invisible marathon across 620 miles of the most hostile airspace on the planet. To keep the radar signature manageable, Ukrainian mission planners haven't just launched a mob. They've scheduled a train service of destruction, splitting the 91 drone swarm into 4 distinct waves spaced 30 minutes apart. Deep inside a concrete bunker in Kyiv, a 23-year-old operator named Alex is sweating through his t-shirt. He isn't watching a camera feed. He's staring at a digital 3D map built from terabytes of stolen satellite data. He's currently shepherding the second wave of drones, and right now, a red icon is flashing on his screen. A Russian Mi-8 HIP helicopter is flying a night patrol route near the border, drifting exactly where it shouldn't be. Alex doesn't hesitate. He knows that at 200 feet, his drones are sitting ducks. If that Russian pilot looks down, the element of surprise vanishes. With a few rapid keystrokes, he commands the entire flight to drop from 200 feet to a terrifying 40 feet, hugging the frozen surface of the Volkhov River. At this altitude, the drones are skimming below the tree line, masked by the riverbanks, where a single downdraft or a frozen power line would turn a sophisticated weapon into underwater debris. But this death-defying maneuver wasn't a guess. It was a calculation based on 8 months of obsessive surveillance. Intelligence knew that at exactly 11:15 a.m., the Russian border radar crews conduct a shift change. For roughly 4 minutes, screens go unwatched, cigarettes are lit, and focus drifts. Alex times the run perfectly. The swarm slips through the gap in the radar coverage with mere seconds to spare, leaving the Russian Mi-8 pilot staring into the darkness, completely unaware that a fleet of flying bombs just passed beneath his boots. At 11:16 p.m., as the first wave of drones breaches the perimeter of Lake Valdai, the luxury silence of Putin's winter retreat is violently murdered. The monitors, which had been quiet for hours, suddenly erupt in a cacophony of red warning lights. The Russian gravestone engagement radars, belonging to the 3 Pantsir S-100 systems guarding the southern approach, have finally woken up. In a fraction of a second, the invisible electromagnetic spectrum over the lake transforms into a killing field. The radar locks onto 25 incoming targets simultaneously. The first Pantsir battery, positioned on Ryabinovi Island, doesn't hesitate. It ripples off 8 57E6 missiles in rapid succession. These aren't subtle weapons, they are supersonic telephone poles accelerating to Mach 3 instantly, turning the frozen night sky into a blinding strobe light of rocket exhaust. The impact is catastrophic. 12 Beaver drones are swatted out of the sky in a single heartbeat, their composite bodies disintegrating under the force of fragmentation warheads. The fireball reflects off the ice, briefly illuminating the panic breaking out on the ground. Massive swarm inbound from the southwest. Activate the full kill chain, a Russian officer screams over the unencrypted radio frequency. Simultaneously, the electronic warfare station nestled near the main palace kicks into overdrive. It blasts out jamming signals at maximum power, flooding the airwaves with enough noise to drown out every GPS satellite in the hemisphere. On the Ukrainian screens, 20 live feeds instantly cut to static, digital darkness. But the Russians aren't done. The second Pantsir unit, realizing the missiles aren't reloading fast enough, switches to its 30mm autocannons. The twin barrels spin up, spitting high explosive shells at a rate of 5,000 rounds per minute. It sounds like a giant canvas sheet being ripped in half by a god. Lines of tracer fire draw glowing geometric shapes across the dark sky, hunting for the plastic swarm in a desperate attempt to stop the inevitable. The element of surprise is gone. Now, it is a raw, kinetic brawl. At 11:18 p.m. In the Kyiv bunker, Alex watches the first wave vaporize and doesn't flinch. With the air defense network fully lit up and scrambling to reload, the real game begins. 40 remaining Beaver drones suddenly break formation, executing a pre-programmed psychotic zigzag flight path. They are utilizing the reflective surface of the frozen lake to bounce radar signals, creating a ghosting effect that makes one drone look like 5 on the Russian scopes. It works, but it's messy. The Russian gunners, now firing blindly into the expanding cloud of debris and smoke from the first wave, manage to swat another 18 drones out of the air. The sky is a chaotic soup of shrapnel and burning plastic, and the thick black smoke is starting to blind the optical sensors of the surviving drones. But this carnage was priced in. The real ace up the sleeve comes from a critical data point collected 6 months ago. Ukrainian intelligence identified that the 4 Pantsir units guarding the northern perimeter have a fatal elevation limit. They physically cannot lower their radar dishes enough to track targets flying below the dense canopy of the pine forest without the signal scattering off the trees. Seeing the kill zone ahead, the swarm banks hard, abandoning the open lake to dive straight into the dense tree line. They are trading the risk of missiles for the risk of hitting a tree trunk at 90 miles per hour. It is a suicidal maneuver, and 5 drones clip branches and cartwheel into the snow. But for the rest, the gamble pays off. The Russian intercept rate instantly drops to 0. Over the intercepted radio net, a Russian operator's voice cracks with genuine terror. "Targets have entered the tree line. I have 0 elevation lock. They are under the radar." The technological advantage of the Pantsir has just been defeated by a bunch of pine trees and some very good homework. At 11:20 p.m. Realizing the kinetic defense is failing, the Russian commanders play their final card. 2 massive Krasuka 4 electronic warfare stations, truck-mounted beasts capable of blinding AWACS planes, surge to maximum output. They blast broadband jamming signals across the entire radio spectrum, creating an invisible wall of white noise. Instantly, 25 of the remaining standard radio-controlled drones drop out of the sky like stoned birds, their control links severed and their GPS brains fried. In the bunker, Alex watches the telemetry die and cracks a tired smile. "Right on schedule," he mutters. This was the exact scenario the September reconnaissance mission had predicted. He flips a guarded switch, activating the mission's true heavy hitters: 21 jet-powered Lutai drones and 10 modified Beavers. These aren't flying on radio waves. As they accelerate, they unspool a micro-thin fiber-optic cable from a canister in their fuselage. It is a literal physical tether stretching for 50 miles back to the relay nodes. The Russians are pumping out enough jamming energy to cook a microwave dinner, but you cannot jam light traveling through glass. It is the tactical equivalent of switching from a laggy, crowded public Starbucks Wi-Fi to a dedicated hardwired gigabit fiber line. While the Russian EW operators stare at their screens in confusion, wondering why the targets aren't falling, the fiber-optic swarm splits into 5 distinct kill teams. They execute a starfish dispersal pattern. One group loops north, another hugs the eastern tree line, a third skims the southern island, and the 4th races down the old access road. The 5th group climbs vertically, screaming loud and high to act as a distraction. The Russians are now fighting a Hydra that is deaf to their electronic screams and is attacking from every point on the compass. At 11:30 p.m., the battle for the inner perimeter turns into a mathematical nightmare for the Russian defenders. After 10 minutes of continuous engagement, the Pantsir systems are reaching their physical breaking point. The barrels of their 30mm cannons are glowing cherry red, warping slightly from the heat, degrading accuracy with every burst. The missile magazines are 50% empty, and the reload crews are fumbling with heavy canisters in the snow, terrified and exhausted. Inside the Russian command vehicle, the fire control officer is screaming, "System saturation! The computer can't distinguish priority targets!" It is a kinetic DDoS attack. The radar is tracking so many vectors converging from 5 different directions that the targeting logic is effectively freezing up. The swarm, whittled down to 28 survivors, enters the final approach. This is where the months of intelligence gathering pay off in terrifying detail. These drones aren't just hitting buildings, they are targeting the specific lifestyle of the president. Group 1 locks on to the underground spa complex, specifically aiming for the ventilation shafts of the cryo chamber. Group 2 dives toward the garage housing the armored Aurus Senate limousines. Group 3 targets the helipad where 2 Mi-8s sit fueled and ready. Group 4 aims for the backup generator bunker, and Group 5 heads for the private chapel, a psychological blow. In Kiev, a 28-year-old operator named Maxim fights to keep his hands steady. His pulse is thumping in his ears like a drum. On his screen, a final missile streak misses his Liuti drone by inches. 19 left, he whispers, his voice cracking. Let's ruin his steam bath. The Pantsers manage one last desperate volley, swatting 10 more drones out of the air just yards from the mansion walls. The explosions shatter the triple-paned bulletproof glass of the main residence, sending alarms howling through the night. A Russian commander, watching the feed in horror, grabs the radio. They've breached the inner ring, requesting immediate S-400 support. But it's a useless request. The massive S-400 batteries stationed miles away are designed to kill bombers at 200 miles, not plastic quadcopters flying at window height. The fortress has a $1 billion shield, but right now, it can't stop a $20 hammer. At 11:40 a.m., 14 surviving drones initiate their terminal dive simultaneously, screaming down from the pitch-black sky at 150 miles per hour. This is the moment physics takes the wheel. The first group of Beaver drones slams into the roof of the underground spa complex. These warheads are designed with shaped charges, specifically meant to penetrate armor, so the layer of decorative soil and reinforced concrete covering Putin's leisure center offers about as much protection as wet cardboard. The 44-pound warheads punch through the ceiling and detonate inside the facility. The blast wave vaporizes the Italian marble mud baths and ruptures the pressurized nitrogen tanks of the cryo chamber. The resulting overpressure blows out the reinforced skylights, sending a geyser of flame and shattered glass 300 feet into the night air. Milliseconds later, a massive Liuti jet drone finds its mark at the garage. It doesn't just hit the building, it crashes directly through the bay doors and into the line of parked Aurus Senate limousines. The kinetic energy alone crumples the heavy armored vehicles like soda cans, but then the jet fuel ignites. The garage instantly transforms into a blast furnace, melting the aluminum chassis of the Russian-made luxury cars that Putin loves to show off to foreign dictators. Simultaneously, the helipad disintegrates. 2 drones airburst directly above the parked Mi-8 helicopters, shredding their rotor blades with shrapnel and puncturing their fuel tanks. The escape route is cut. If the president wants to leave now, he is walking. By 01:35 a.m., the shooting stops. The silence returns to Lake Valdai, but it is broken by the crackle of burning timber and the frantic shouting of the Federal Protective Service. By morning, the Russian Ministry of Defense will issue a predictable statement claiming they intercepted 100% of the targets and that falling debris caused minor damage to a landscaping shed. But the commercially available satellite imagery tells a different story. The smoke plumes rising from the garage and the gaping crater in the spa roof are visible from space. Let's look at the return on investment. Ukraine spent perhaps $2 million on this entire swarm. In exchange, they caused tens of millions of dollars in physical damage, but the psychological cost is incalculable. They proved that the most protected man in Russia, surrounded by a $1 billion air defense network, is not safe in his own bed. This was a message written in high explosives. If you freeze our civilians in Kiev, we will burn your luxury in Valdai. The lesson here is simple. You can build 12 Pantsir systems, you can jam the GPS, and you can hide in a forest, but you cannot wall out the ingenuity of a motivated enemy. Ukraine just delivered the loudest New Year's greeting card in history, and the postage was free. If you were the operator, which target would you have picked first? The luxury spa or the escape helicopters? Let me know in the comments. Bye for now.